2 days passed before the test results came back. James received a message through the patient portal on his phone. The EKG showed mild abnormalities, but nothing that required immediate attention. The blood work was normal. The message from Dr. Chen was brief. Results do not indicate acute cardiac event. Continue with stress management techniques. Follow up in 6 months if symptoms persist. James showed the message to Sandra. She read it and shook her head. Mild abnormalities on an EKG are not nothing, Sandra said. Especially with your symptoms, she should be investigating further. Maybe I should just go to another doctor, James said. Yes, you should, Sandra agreed. But I also think you need to report what happened. This is not acceptable care. That evening, James called the hospital's patient advocate office. He was transferred twice before reaching someone who could help. A woman named Maria Rodriguez answered. Patient advocacy, this is Maria. How can I help you? James explained his situation. He spoke calmly and clearly. He gave dates and times. He described the appointment, the dismissive attitude, and the minimal testing. He mentioned overhearing the other patient receiving much more thorough care. Maria listened without interrupting. When James finished, she was quiet for a moment. Mr. Williams, thank you for calling, she said. I want you to know that I take your concerns very seriously. Can I ask you a few more questions? Of course, James said. Did Dr. Chen perform a physical examination beyond listening to your heart? No, she didn't check my pulse. She didn't press on my chest. She didn't look at my legs for swelling. Nothing like that. And how long was the appointment? 7 minutes. I timed it. Maria made a sound that might have been surprise. And you mentioned your primary care physician referred you for a full cardiac workup? Yes, I can send you the referral notes if you need them. That would be helpful, Maria said. Mr. Williams, I'm going to open a formal complaint. This will trigger a review of your case. Someone from our office will contact you within 48 hours. In the meantime, I strongly encourage you to see another cardiologist right away. Don't wait 6 months. Thank you, James said. He felt a small sense of relief. At least someone was listening. One more thing, Maria said. You mentioned you're still having symptoms? Yes, the chest pain comes and goes. The fatigue is getting worse. Please, if the pain gets severe, go to the emergency room immediately. Don't wait. Do you understand? I understand, James said. After he hung up, James felt both validated and worried. Validated that Maria had taken him seriously. Worried that his symptoms were still there and possibly getting worse. Maria Rodriguez sat at her desk after the call ended. She pulled up Dr. Chen's file in the hospital system. She had been a patient advocate for 8 years, and she had learned to trust her instincts. Something about James Williams's complaint felt important. She searched the complaint database for Dr. Chen's name. 3 previous complaints came up. Maria opened each one and read carefully. The first was from 2 years ago. A man named David Brown had complained that Dr. Chen had dismissed his heart attack symptoms as indigestion. He had ended up in the emergency room 12 hours later with a minor heart attack. The complaint had been reviewed and closed as a personality conflict. Dr. Chen had apologized for any miscommunication. The second complaint was from 18 months ago. A woman named Keisha Johnson reported that Dr. Chen had been condescending and had rushed through her appointment. She felt her concerns were not heard. The complaint was closed as no evidence of substandard care. The third complaint was from 8 months ago. An older man named Leonard Thompson said Dr. Chen had delayed his diagnosis for months, insisting his symptoms were age-related when he actually had a serious heart condition. The complaint had been investigated, but Dr. Chen's notes showed she had been following a reasonable diagnostic process. The complaint was closed with a note suggesting Mr. Thompson might benefit from a second opinion in the future. Maria stared at her computer screen. 3 complaints, all from Black patients. She checked the dates of service for each complaint. Then she did something she had never done before. She pulled up Dr. Chen's complete appointment records for the past 5 years. The hospital system tracked appointment lengths automatically. Maria exported the data into a spreadsheet. She spent the next 2 hours analyzing it. She sorted patients by appointment length. Then she cross-referenced with patient demographics. The pattern was unmistakable. White patients saw Dr. Chen for an average of 24 minutes per appointment. Asian patients averaged 18 minutes. Hispanic patients averaged 16 minutes. Black patients averaged 11 minutes. Maria sat back in her chair. She felt sick to her stomach. She dug deeper. She looked at what tests Dr. Chen ordered for different patients with similar symptoms. White patients with chest pain received comprehensive workups, stress tests, echocardiograms, CT angiograms, full blood work panels. Black patients with the same symptoms received basic EKGs and minimal blood work. Maria checked the language in Dr. Chen's notes. For white patients, she used detailed medical terminology and expressed thorough concern. For black patients, words like anxiety, exaggeration, and stress-related appeared frequently. Maria knew she had to escalate this immediately. This was not just one bad appointment. This was a pattern of discriminatory care. She called her supervisor, the director of patient advocacy. His name was Tom Bradford, and he had worked at St. Augustine for 20 years. "Tom, I need to meet with you right away," Maria said. "I've found something serious." 30 minutes later, Maria sat in Tom's office. She showed him the data. She walked him through all 4 complaints. She explained the statistical disparities. Tom's face grew grave as he listened. "This is bad, Maria. This is really bad." "I know," Maria said. "We need to bring this to legal immediately," Tom said. "And we need to notify the medical director. If this is what I think it is, if there's a pattern of racial bias in care delivery, this could be a massive liability for the hospital. More importantly, patients could be getting hurt." "One of them already did get hurt," Maria said. "David Brown had a heart attack, and Leonard Thompson's condition got worse because of the delayed diagnosis." Tom picked up his phone. "I'm calling a meeting for tomorrow morning. Legal medical director, chief of cardiology. Can you prepare a full report?" "I'll have it ready," Maria said. That night, Maria worked late. She compiled everything into a detailed report. She included the appointment data, the complaint histories, the testing patterns, and the language analysis from Dr. Chen's notes. She also pulled files from other cardiologists in the department to show that this pattern was unique to Dr. Chen. The other doctors showed no significant disparities in appointment times or testing patterns based on patient race. While Maria worked at the hospital, James Williams lay in bed at home. The chest pain had returned. It was worse than before. It felt like a heavy weight pressing down on him. "James, are you okay?" Sandra asked. She had noticed him grimacing. "Just the pain again," he said. "It'll pass. How bad is it?" "On a scale of 1 to 10? Maybe a 6, James said. But it was really closer to an 8. Sandra watched him carefully. "If it gets worse, we're going to the ER. I don't care what that doctor said." "I know," James said. "I promise." But James did not want to go to the emergency room. He did not want to be told again that he was overreacting. He did not want to feel dismissed one more time. So he lay there in the dark, breathing slowly, willing the pain to go away. It did not go away. But it did not get worse that night either. The next morning, Maria Rodriguez presented her findings to the hospital leadership team. The room was tense. The chief of cardiology, Dr. Kim Park, looked shocked as he reviewed the data. "I had no idea," he said. "Dr. Chen is one of our most experienced doctors. Her patient outcomes have been good. Have they, though?" Maria asked. "Have we actually tracked outcomes by patient demographics? Or have we just looked at overall numbers?" There was silence in the room. The hospital's legal counsel, a woman named Jennifer Walsh, spoke up. "We need to conduct a full investigation. We need to interview patients. We need to review every case, and we need to do it quietly until we know the full scope of this." "What about Dr. Chen?" Dr. Park asked. "Do we tell her she's being investigated?" "Not yet," Jennifer said. "We gather the facts first. If we alert her now, it could compromise the investigation. She might alter her behavior or her records." Tom Bradford spoke up. "What about Mr. Williams? He's still having symptoms. Maria told him to see another cardiologist, but what if he doesn't? What if something happens to him?" "We should reach out to him directly," Dr. Park said. "Offer him an appointment with another cardiologist immediately. Today, if possible." Maria nodded. "I'll call him this morning." The meeting ended with assignments. Maria would continue gathering patient testimonies. Jennifer would review the legal implications. Dr. Park would begin a clinical review of Dr. Chen's cases. Everything had to be done carefully and thoroughly. As the team left the conference room, Jennifer pulled Maria aside. "You did the right thing bringing this forward," Jennifer said. "I know this isn't easy. Investigating a colleague is never pleasant." "It's not about being pleasant," Maria said. "It's about making sure patients get proper care. It's about making sure the color of their skin doesn't determine whether they live or die. Jennifer nodded slowly. You're right. And if this is as bad as it looks, Dr. Chen's career is going to be over. Maria thought about James Williams and his 7-minute appointment. She thought about David Brown and his heart attack. She thought about Leonard Thompson and his delayed diagnosis. Good, Maria said. James Williams woke up on Thursday morning feeling strange. The chest pain was still there, but there was something else, a tightness that would not go away. His left arm felt heavy and numb. He got out of bed slowly. Sandra had already left for work. She had an early shift at the clinic. James walked to the bathroom and splashed water on his face. He looked at himself in the mirror. He looked tired. His skin had a grayish tone. James went downstairs and made coffee. He sat at the kitchen table and checked his email on his phone. There was a message from Maria Rodriguez at the hospital. She wanted him to come in today to see a different cardiologist. Dr. David Park could see him at 2 o'clock. James felt relieved. At least someone was taking him seriously. He replied to the email saying he would be there. He got ready for work. He worked from home most days, which was convenient. His home office was upstairs. He climbed the stairs slowly, holding the railing. By the time he reached the top, he was breathing hard. James sat at his desk and opened his laptop. He had a video meeting at 9. He joined the call and tried to focus, but his chest felt tight. The pain was getting worse. It was no longer a dull ache. It was a sharp, pressing sensation that made it hard to breathe. James, are you okay? His colleague asked. You don't look good. I'm fine, James said. Just tired, but he was not fine. The pain was spreading now, radiating down his left arm and up into his jaw. James recognized these symptoms. He had read about them. He had talked to Sandra about them. These were the classic signs of a heart attack. James tried to stand up. The room spun. He grabbed the edge of his desk. His laptop fell to the floor with a crash. James followed it down. He collapsed onto the carpet, gasping for air. The pain in his chest was overwhelming now. It felt like an elephant standing on him. James reached for his phone. His fingers were numb. He managed to dial 911. 911, what's your emergency? Heart attack, James gasped. I think I'm having a heart attack. Sir, what's your address? James gave his address. His voice was weak. Help is on the way, the operator said. Stay on the line with me. Are you alone? Yes, James whispered. Can you unlock your front door? James could not move. No, can't move. That's okay, sir. The paramedics will get in. Try to stay calm. Take slow breaths if you can. James lay on the floor. He could hear his video meeting still going in the background. His colleagues were calling his name, asking if he was there. But James could not answer. All he could do was focus on breathing. The operator kept talking to him. Her voice was steady and calm. It helped. James held onto that voice like a lifeline. He heard sirens in the distance. They got louder. Then he heard banging on his front door. He heard it crash open. Heavy footsteps ran up the stairs. We've got him, a voice said. Paramedics surrounded him. They asked questions. They put an oxygen mask on his face. They checked his vital signs. James heard words he did not fully understand. ST elevation, posterior wall, critical condition. We need to move fast, one paramedic said. St. Augustine is closest. Let's go. They lifted James onto a stretcher. Everything was moving so quickly. They carried him down the stairs and out to the ambulance. James saw his neighbors standing in their yards watching. The ambulance doors closed. The siren started. Hang in there, Mr. Williams, a paramedic said. We're getting you help. James closed his eyes. He thought about Sandra. He hoped she would get to the hospital in time. He thought about his daughter who was in college. He should have called her more often. He thought about all the things he still wanted to do. The ambulance pulled up to St. Augustine Medical Center emergency entrance. The doors flew open. James was rushed inside. Doctors and nurses surrounded him immediately. 52-year-old male, acute myocardial infarction, a paramedic said, handing over paperwork. ST elevation and multiple leads. Blood pressure dropping. A doctor appeared above James. He had kind eyes behind his glasses. Mr. Williams, I'm Dr. David Park. We're going to take care of you. We need to do emergency surgery to open your blocked arteries. Do you understand? James tried to nod. I need verbal consent if you can give it, Dr. Park said. Yes, James managed to say. Do it. Good, we're going to put you under now. Someone put an IV in his arm. A mask went over his face. James heard people moving quickly around him. Then everything went dark. Dr. David Park scrubbed his hands and arms for surgery. He had been a cardiologist for 12 years. He had performed hundreds of emergency angioplasties, but each one felt urgent and important. Each one was someone's life. The OR team was ready when Dr. Park entered. James Williams was already under anesthesia. The monitors showed his vital signs. His heart was struggling. "Let's save this man's life," Dr. Park said. He made a small incision in James's wrist and inserted a catheter. He guided it up through the arteries toward the heart. On the screen, he could see the blood vessels. He looked for the blockage. What he saw made him pause. "Look at this," Dr. Park said to his team. The main coronary artery was 90% blocked, but that was not all. 2 other arteries showed significant disease. This was severe coronary artery disease. This had been building for a while. Dr. Park worked carefully. He inserted a stent to open the blocked artery. Blood flow returned. James's heart responded immediately. The monitors showed improvement, but Dr. Park was troubled. This should have been caught earlier. With proper testing, this would have been found before it became an emergency, before permanent damage was done. "Procedure complete," Dr. Park said. "Let's get him to recovery." While James was in recovery, Dr. Park went to his office. He pulled up James's medical records in the system. He saw the recent appointment with Dr. Chen 4 days ago. He read her notes. Patient presence with chest pain and shortness of breath. Likely anxiety-related. Patient appears stressed about symptoms. EKG shows mild abnormalities, but nothing acute. Advised stress management and follow-up in 6 months. Dr. Park felt anger rising in his chest. He looked at the scans from today's surgery. He compared them to the symptoms James had reported. The man had classic signs of coronary artery disease. With his family history, this should have been investigated thoroughly. Dr. Park picked up the phone and called the patient advocacy office. "This is Dr. Park. I need to speak with Maria Rodriguez immediately." Maria came on the line. "Dr. Park, what can I do for you?" "James Williams just came through my OR. He had a major heart attack. Severe coronary artery disease. It should have been diagnosed days ago." There was silence on the other end. "He saw Dr. Chen 4 days ago," Dr. Park continued. "She told him it was anxiety. She ran a basic EKG and sent him home. Maria, this man has significant heart disease. He could have died today. Actually, he almost did die. Is he going to be okay?" Maria asked quietly. "He'll survive, but he has permanent heart damage. Damage that could have been prevented if he had been properly diagnosed when he first came in." "Dr. Park, there's something you should know," Maria said. "We're investigating Dr. Chen. We found a pattern of inadequate care for Black patients." Dr. Park closed his eyes. "How many patients?" "We don't know yet. We're still gathering data." "I want to see everything you have," Dr. Park said. "This is beyond a patient advocacy issue now. This is a clinical quality issue. People are being hurt." "I'll send you the report," Maria said. An hour later, Sandra Williams arrived at the hospital. She had received a call while she was with a patient. Her husband was in the ICU after emergency heart surgery. She drove to St. Augustine so fast she was amazed she did not get pulled over. Maria Rodriguez met her at the ICU entrance. "Mrs. Williams?" "Where is he?" "Is he alive?" "He's alive. Dr. Park saved his life. Let me take you to him." Sandra followed Maria through the ICU doors. She saw James in the bed. He was pale and connected to multiple machines. But he was breathing. His chest was moving up and down. Sandra went to his side and took his hand. "Baby, I'm here. I'm right here." James's eyes fluttered open. "Sandra," he whispered, "don't talk, just rest. You're going to be okay." Tears ran down Sandra's face. She had almost lost him. If he had waited any longer to call 911, if the paramedics had been slower, if Dr. Park had not been there, she would be a widow right now. Dr. Park came into the room. "Mrs. Williams, I'm Dr. Park. I performed your husband's surgery." Sandra stood and shook his hand. "Thank you. Thank you for saving him." "I wish I could have done more," Dr. Park said. "Your husband has suffered some permanent damage to his heart muscle. The heart attack killed some of the tissue. He'll need medication for the rest of his life. He may not be able to return to the level of activity he had before." "But he's alive," Sandra said. "Yes, he's alive." "But Mrs. Williams, I need to be honest with you. This should not have happened." Your husband showed clear symptoms of heart disease 4 days ago. If proper testing had been done then, we would have found these blockages before they caused a heart attack. We could have done a scheduled procedure instead of emergency surgery. Sandra felt her grief turning to anger. That Dr. Chen, she told him it was anxiety. I know, Dr. Park said. And I'm deeply sorry. I've read his chart. The care he received was inadequate. What happens now? Sandra asked. Now we focus on his recovery, Dr. Park said. He'll be in the ICU for a day or two. Then we'll move him to a regular room. Physical therapy will help him regain strength. We'll adjust his medications. In a few months, he should be relatively stable. And what about that doctor? Sandra demanded. What about Dr. Chen? Does she just keep seeing patients? Does she get to do this to someone else? Dr. Park and Maria exchanged glances. There's an investigation underway, Maria said. I can't give you details, but please know that we're taking this very seriously. Sandra looked at her husband. He had fallen asleep again. His face was peaceful now, but she knew he was changed forever. His heart was damaged. His body was weakened, all because someone did not think his pain was worth investigating. I want justice, Sandra said quietly, not for revenge. For protection, so this never happens to anyone else. The hospital formed a special review committee 3 days after James Williams's heart attack. The committee included the medical director, chief of cardiology, head of quality assurance, legal counsel, and 2 independent doctors from outside the hospital. They met in a conference room on the 4th floor. Maria Rodriguez presented her findings first. She showed the appointment time data, the testing patterns, the complaint histories. The numbers told a clear story. Dr. Chen treated black patients differently than white patients. The difference was not small or accidental. It was large and consistent. This data covers 5 years, Maria said. Over that time, Dr. Chen saw approximately 2,000 patients. 340 of them were black. Those patients received an average of 11 minutes per appointment. White patients received 24 minutes. That's less than half the time. One of the independent doctors, an older man named Dr. Lee, spoke up. Could there be other factors? Maybe the black patients had simpler cases. We controlled for that, Maria said. We looked at patients with similar diagnoses and symptom presentations. The disparity remained. In fact, it was even more pronounced in complex cases. White patients with chest pain received comprehensive workups. Black patients with identical symptoms received minimal testing. She clicked to the next slide. It showed language analysis from Dr. Chen's patient notes. These are word clouds based on how Dr. Chen described different patients. On the left are words she used most often for white patients. On the right are words for black patients. The difference was striking. White patients were described as concerned, anxious about health, proactive, worried, black. Patients were described as anxious, exaggerating, demanding, non-compliant. But were the outcomes different? Another committee member asked. Did the black patients have worse health outcomes? Maria nodded to Dr. Park. He stood and pulled up his own presentation. I've reviewed 20 cases where black patients saw Dr. Chen with cardiac symptoms, Dr. Park said. In 14 of those cases, the patients were later diagnosed with actual heart disease, either by another doctor or through emergency admission. That's 70%. All 14 cases received minimal workup from Dr. Chen initially. He clicked to show a comparison group. By contrast, when white patients saw Dr. Chen with similar symptoms, 92% received comprehensive testing on the first visit. Of those who had heart disease, it was caught early and managed electively. Only 2 required emergency intervention. The room was silent. What you're seeing is the result of implicit bias, Dr. Park said. Dr. Chen believed black patients when they said they had symptoms. She just did not believe those symptoms were as serious. She assumed anxiety or stress. She assumed exaggeration. And because of those assumptions, she did not order the tests that would have found the real problems. Jennifer Walsh, the legal counsel, leaned forward. We need to interview patients directly. We need documented testimonies. The data is damning, but we need personal accounts to complete the picture. I've already started, Maria said. I've reached out to 15 patients who filed complaints or who had documented issues. 8 have agreed to talk to us. Over the next 2 weeks, Maria conducted interviews. She met with patients in private conference rooms. She listened to their stories. Some cried. Some were angry. All of them felt betrayed. David Brown came in first. He was a 48-year-old accountant. 2 years ago, he had gone to Dr. Chen with severe chest pain. She told me I probably had heartburn, David said. She said black folks tend to have more digestive issues because of diet. She actually said that. She gave me a prescription for antacids and sent me home. What happened next? Maria asked. I had a heart attack that night. My wife called 911. I spent a week in the hospital. The doctors were shocked that I hadn't been tested properly. They said the warning signs were all there. Did you complain? I did, but nothing happened. They told me it was a miscommunication. They said Dr. Chen had apologized. But she never apologized to me. She never even called me. Keisha Johnson came next. She was a 55-year-old teacher. 18 months ago, she had seen Dr. Chen about irregular heartbeats. I told her my heart was racing and skipping beats, Keisha said. She asked me if I drank a lot of coffee. I said no. She asked if I was stressed at work. I said I had normal work stress. She told me some people are just more sensitive to stress. She said maybe I needed to learn to calm down. Did she run any tests? She did an EKG. It came back abnormal. But she said it was probably nothing. She told me to come back in 6 months if it kept happening. Did you go back? No, I went to a different cardiologist. He found I had atrial fibrillation. He said I was at high risk for stroke. He put me on medication immediately. He was horrified when I told him Dr. Chen had seen the abnormal EKG and done nothing. The stories continued. Each one was similar. Symptoms dismissed. Tests not ordered. Patients made to feel like they were overreacting or imagining things. Leonard Thompson was 70 years old. He walked slowly into the conference room using a cane. 8 months ago, he had seen Dr. Chen about fatigue and shortness of breath. She told me I was getting old, Leonard said. She said these things happen as we age. She told me to accept it and adjust my lifestyle. Did she investigate the cause? Not really. She did basic blood work. Everything came back normal. So she said there was nothing wrong with me. But I knew something was wrong. I could barely walk across my living room without getting winded. What did you do? I kept going back. I saw her 3 more times over 6 months. Each time she told me the same thing. Getting old is hard. Learn to accept limitations. Finally, my daughter insisted I see someone else. That doctor did more tests. Turns out I had severe coronary artery disease. I needed bypass surgery. How are you now? Maria asked gently. Leonard looked down at his hands. The surgery helped, but the damage was done. If they had caught it 6 months earlier, I might not have needed such extensive surgery. The doctor said I lost heart function during that time. Function I'll never get back. Maria felt sick after each interview. These were not isolated incidents. This was a pattern of negligence based on race. People had been hurt. People could have died. But the most damaging testimony came from someone Maria had not expected. Dr. Emily Harrison was a white cardiologist who had worked alongside Dr. Chen for 5 years. She requested a meeting with the committee. Dr. Harrison sat in the conference room, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She looked nervous but determined. I should have come forward sooner, she said. I've been carrying this guilt for months. Years, maybe. What do you need to tell us? Jennifer Walsh asked. Dr. Chen was my mentor when I joined this hospital, Emily said. She taught me a lot about cardiology, but she also taught me things that made me uncomfortable, things I should have questioned. Like what? Emily took a deep breath. She told me that some patients exaggerate their symptoms more than others. She said you have to learn to tell the difference between real medical issues and attention-seeking behavior. She said this especially about black patients. The room was very quiet. She said black patients often have lower pain tolerance and tend to dramatize their symptoms. She said they're more likely to be non-compliant with treatment plans. She said we can't waste expensive tests on patients who won't follow through with treatment anyway. Did she say this often? Dr. Park asked. Yes, it was part of her teaching. She framed it as clinical wisdom, as learning to be efficient with resources. I was young and inexperienced. She was senior and respected. I believed her. When did you start to question it? About a year ago. I had a patient, a black woman with chest pain. I was about to follow Dr. Chen's advice and order minimal testing. But something made me pause. I decided to order a full workup instead. We found a 90% blockage. The woman needed immediate surgery. If I had followed Dr. Chen's approach, that woman would have gone home and probably had a massive heart attack. Emily wiped her eyes. That's when I realized what I'd been doing. How many patients I might have underserved because I listened to Dr. Chen. I started paying attention to how she talked about patients. I started noticing patterns. Did you ever hear her say anything explicitly racist? Jennifer asked. Not using slurs or anything like that, but yes, racist things. Once I heard her tell another doctor that black patients abuse the healthcare system and don't really want to get better. They just want attention. Another time she said we should save the advanced imaging for patients who will actually benefit from it. When I asked what she meant, she said some patients are more motivated to improve their health than others. Did you report any of this? Emily shook her head, tears falling now. No, I was afraid Dr. Chen had influence. She was well respected. I thought no one would believe me. I thought I would be the one who got in trouble for making accusations. I convinced myself maybe I was misunderstanding her. But I wasn't. I knew exactly what she meant. Why come forward now? Maria asked. Because James Williams almost died. Because I read his chart and saw what happened. And I thought, what if that was my fault? What if I could have prevented this years ago by speaking up? I can't stay silent anymore. My career isn't worth someone's life. After Emily left, the committee sat in silence for a long moment. This is worse than we thought, the medical director said finally. This isn't just unconscious bias. This is deliberate discrimination. We need to check her communications, Jennifer said. Emails, text messages. If she's saying these things out loud, she might be writing them too. The IT department pulled Dr. Chen's email and text message records. They found messages between Dr. Chen and another doctor, someone who had since left the hospital. The messages were shocking. In one text, Dr. Chen wrote, "Another dramatic chest pain patient today. Why do they always think they're dying? Just anxiety, like always." In another, "Spent 2 hours dealing with demanding family. Don't these people have jobs?" In an email to a colleague, "We need to be more efficient with test ordering. Insurance companies are cracking down. Save the expensive workups for patients who will actually follow treatment plans." The language was coded, but the meaning was clear when combined with the data showing which patients were actually receiving those expensive workups. The committee's work took 3 weeks total. At the end, they compiled a comprehensive report. The evidence was overwhelming. Dr. Chen had provided substandard care to black patients for years. She had shown racial bias in her decision-making. She had caused actual harm to multiple patients. The medical board was notified. They opened their own investigation. Dr. Chen was placed on immediate administrative leave. She could not see patients while the investigation continued. Dr. Chen hired a lawyer. She denied any wrongdoing. She claimed the statistical differences were coincidental. She said she treated all patients equally and with respect, but the numbers did not lie. The patient testimonies did not lie. Dr. Emily Harrison's witness account did not lie. Meanwhile, James Williams lay in a hospital bed, recovering from surgery that should never have been necessary. His heart was permanently damaged. His life was forever changed. And across the city, other patients who had been dismissed by Dr. Chen were learning that their care had been inadequate, that their instincts had been right, and that the color of their skin had determined whether they lived or died. The story broke on the local news 6 weeks after James Williams's heart attack. A reporter named Sarah Mitchell had received an anonymous tip about the investigation at St. Augustine Medical Center. She started digging into the story and found more than she expected. Tonight, a shocking investigation into potential racial bias at one of our city's most respected hospitals. Sarah said on the evening news, "Sources tell us that a prominent cardiologist is under review for allegedly providing different levels of care to patients based on their race." The station did not name Dr. Chen yet, but they reported the basic facts: statistical disparities in appointment times, differences in testing patterns, multiple patient complaints. The hospital released a brief statement saying they took all allegations seriously and were conducting a thorough investigation. The story exploded on social media. People shared their own experiences of discrimination in healthcare. Black patients told stories of being dismissed by doctors, of having their pain ignored, of not being believed. The hashtag racial bias in medicine trended for 3 days. Dr. Chen's name leaked 2 days later. Someone from inside the hospital told the media. Suddenly, her photo was everywhere. News cameras showed up at her house. Reporters called her phone. She stopped answering. The medical board accelerated their investigation. They held a formal hearing 4 weeks later. James Williams was invited to testify. He was still weak from his heart attack, but he agreed to come. Sandra helped him dress that morning. He moved slowly, carefully. His chest hurt when he moved too fast. His stamina was low. Simple tasks exhausted him. "You don't have to do this," Sandra said. "You can submit a written statement instead." "No," James said. "I need to be there. Other people need to see that this is real, that I'm real." They drove to the medical board offices downtown. It was a gray building with no personality. Inside, they were directed to a hearing room on the 3rd floor. The room was formal and intimidating. A long table at the front where the board members sat. Chairs for witnesses, a court reporter in the corner. Dr. Chen sat with her lawyer at one table. The hospital's legal team sat at another. James and Sandra took seats in the gallery. Maria Rodriguez was already there. So was Dr. Park. So were several other patients who had complained about Dr. Chen. The board chair, a woman named Dr. Susan Mitchell, called the hearing to order. "This is a formal review of the medical license of Dr. Margaret Chen," she said. "The board has received complaints regarding quality of care and potential bias in treatment decisions. Dr. Chen, you have the right to respond to all allegations. Do you understand?" Dr. Chen stood. "Yes, I understand, and please sit. We'll begin with a presentation of the evidence." For the next 2 hours, the board reviewed everything. Maria Rodriguez presented the statistical analysis. Dr. Park presented the clinical review. Jennifer Walsh presented the patient complaints and testimonies. Everything was laid out clearly and methodically. Dr. Chen's lawyer, a sharp man in an expensive suit, tried to poke holes in the evidence. He argued that appointment times could vary for many reasons. He suggested that test ordering patterns might reflect clinical judgment rather than bias. He claimed that patient perceptions of discrimination might be inaccurate, but then the board called witnesses. David Brown testified first. He told his story calmly and clearly. He described how Dr. Chen had dismissed his heart attack symptoms. He showed the committee his medical records from his emergency hospitalization. "I trusted her," David said. "I thought she knew what she was doing. I never imagined a doctor would just not believe me." Keisha Johnson went next. She was composed but emotional. "I'm a teacher," she said. "I have a master's degree. I'm articulate and professional, and she still treated me like I didn't know my own body, like I was making things up. When I found out I had atrial fibrillation and could have had a stroke, I was terrified and angry. So angry that I had been made to feel crazy when I was actually sick." Leonard Thompson struggled to the witness chair with his cane. He spoke slowly but firmly. "I'm 70 years old. I served in Vietnam. I raised 4 children. I worked hard my whole life. And this doctor made me feel like I was worthless, like my life didn't matter enough to investigate why I couldn't breathe. I'll never get back what I lost. My heart is permanently damaged. I can't play with my grandchildren anymore. I can't work in my garden, all because she didn't think I was worth her time." Then it was James's turn. James walked to the witness chair. Sandra watched from her seat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. James sat down carefully. "He was sworn in, Mr. Williams," Dr. Mitchell said gently. "I know this is difficult. Please tell us about your experience with Dr. Chen." James took a breath. "I went to see Dr. Chen because I was having chest pains. I was scared. My father had a heart attack at 55. I thought maybe the same thing was happening to me." He described the appointment, the 7 minutes, the dismissiveness, the suggestion that he try yoga, the refusal to order proper tests. "I kept thinking maybe I am overreacting," James said. "Maybe it is just anxiety. She's the expert, right?" So I tried to believe her. I tried to tell myself the pain would go away. His voice cracked slightly. 4 days later, I had a massive heart attack. I collapsed in my home office. If I had been anywhere else, if the ambulance had taken longer, I would have died. My wife would have come home to find me dead on the floor. The room was completely silent. "I have permanent heart damage now," James continued. "I had to retire from my job. I can't exercise the way I used to. I get tired walking upstairs. I'm 52 years old and I feel like I'm 80. And it didn't have to be this way. If Dr. Chen had just listened to me, if she had just ordered the test that any other cardiologist would have ordered, if she had just believed that my pain was real." Dr. Mitchell leaned forward. Mr. Williams, did you ever think that Dr. Chen's treatment of you was related to your race? James was quiet for a moment. I didn't want to think that. I really didn't. Because if that's true, it means I almost died because of the color of my skin. It means that in 2024, in a modern hospital, a doctor still looked at me and saw something less than human, less deserving, less important. He looked directly at Dr. Chen. She did not meet his eyes. I heard her with another patient after my appointment, James said. A white woman with the same symptoms I had. Dr. Chen spent 30 minutes with her. She ordered every test available. She was warm and caring. I got 7 minutes and was told to do yoga. How did that make you feel? Dr. Mitchell asked. Small, James said quietly. It made me feel small and invisible, like I didn't matter. Dr. Chen's lawyer stood up. Objection. The witness is speculating about the other patient's care. He doesn't know what her symptoms were or why certain tests were ordered. I'm not speculating, James said. I stood in that hallway and listened. She said the symptoms were very similar to another patient's. She said she wanted to catch anything early. The woman had chest pain and shortness of breath, just like me. The lawyer sat down. The most powerful testimony came from Dr. Emily Harrison. She had been granted immunity in exchange for her complete honesty. She held nothing back. Dr. Chen taught me that black patients were less reliable historians of their own symptoms, Emily said. She taught me to be skeptical of their complaints. She said this was clinical wisdom, but it was racism. I know that now. And I participated in it. I'm ashamed of that. Emily looked at the patients in the gallery. I am so sorry. To all of you, I should have spoken up years ago. I was a coward. I protected my career instead of protecting you. That will haunt me for the rest of my life. She turned back to the board. Dr. Chen's bias was not unconscious. It was deliberate and explicit. She knew what she was doing. She made choices about who deserved comprehensive care and who didn't. Those choices were based on race, and people suffered because of it. The board also reviewed the text messages and emails. They were read aloud in the hearing room. Each one was worse than the last. Another dramatic patient today. Why do they always think they're dying? Save the expensive tests for patients who will follow through. When combined with the data showing which patients actually received those expensive tests, the meaning was clear. Dr. Chen's lawyer made his closing argument. He claimed this was all a misunderstanding. He said Dr. Chen had an exemplary career. He suggested that the statistical differences might reflect unconscious patterns that Dr. Chen would correct, now that she was aware of them. My client made no malicious choices, the lawyer said. At worst, this is a case of implicit bias that many doctors share. It should be addressed through training and education, not by destroying a career. But Jennifer Walsh, representing the hospital, had the final word. This is not implicit bias, she said. Implicit bias is unconscious. Dr. Chen's bias was conscious and sustained over many years. She knew black patients received less time and fewer tests. She knew because she made deliberate choices to give them less time and order fewer tests. She taught other doctors to do the same thing. Jennifer held up a stack of papers. These are the medical records of 14 black patients who had actual heart disease that Dr. Chen failed to diagnose or delayed in diagnosing. 14 people who suffered because Dr. Chen decided their symptoms were not worth investigating. One of them almost died. Several have permanent damage. This is not a training issue. This is a pattern of discriminatory care that violates every principle of medical ethics. The board deliberated for 2 days. The hearing room was packed when they returned with their decision. Dr. Susan Mitchell read the verdict. The board has reviewed all evidence presented. We find that Dr. Margaret Chen engaged in a sustained pattern of discriminatory care based on patient race. This pattern resulted in substandard treatment for numerous patients and caused actual harm. We find that Dr. Chen violated the ethical standards of the medical profession. She looked directly at Dr. Chen. Dr. Chen, your behavior has undermined public trust in the medical system. You have failed in your duty to provide equal care to all patients. The board's decision is unanimous. Your medical license is hereby revoked, effective immediately. This revocation is permanent. You may not reapply for licensure in this state. Dr. Chen stood up. Her face was pale. This is wrong. You're ruining my career over statistical coincidence and patient complaints. I've saved hundreds of lives. And you've endangered dozens of others, Dr. Mitchell said. You may have saved lives, but you also decided which lives were worth saving. That is not medicine. That is discrimination. This hearing is concluded. Dr. Chen's lawyer gathered his papers. Dr. Chen stood frozen for a moment, then left the room quickly. Cameras were waiting outside. In the hearing room, James Williams sat with his wife's hand in his. He felt no joy, no sense of victory, just a deep sadness that it had come to this, that someone had to lose their career before people would listen, that he had to almost die before anyone took his complaint seriously. But he also felt something else, a quiet hope, because maybe now things would change. Maybe now other patients would be heard. Maybe now the color of someone's skin would not determine whether they lived or died. That would have to be enough. The news of Dr. Chen's license revocation spread quickly. It was covered by national media outlets. Medical journals wrote articles about the case. It became a watershed moment in discussions about racial bias in healthcare. St. Augustine Medical Center faced intense scrutiny. Patient advocacy groups demanded accountability. Local politicians called for investigations. The hospital's reputation was damaged. They knew they had to take serious action. 2 weeks after the medical board hearing, the hospital held a press conference. The CEO, Robert Kim, stood at a podium with James Williams beside him. "We failed our patients," Robert said. "We failed to detect a pattern of discriminatory care. We failed to take early complaints seriously. We failed to protect the people who trusted us with their lives. For that, we are deeply sorry." He turned to James. "Mr. Williams came to us for help and was turned away. He almost died because of failures in our system. We cannot undo that harm, but we can commit to making sure it never happens again." Robert announced a settlement with James. The amount was not disclosed, but it was substantial. More importantly, the hospital agreed to implement the changes James had requested. "Mr. Williams asked us not for money, but for systemic reform," Robert said. "He asked that we ensure no other patient suffers as he did. We are implementing comprehensive changes to how we deliver care and monitor for bias." The hospital created a new program called the James Williams Patient Dignity Initiative. It had several components. First, mandatory bias training for all clinical staff. Not the usual 1-hour video training that people clicked through without paying attention. Real intensive training that took 2 full days. It covered the history of medical racism, current research on health disparities, and practical strategies for recognizing and counteracting bias. Second, appointment time monitoring. The hospital's computer system would now track how long doctors spent with different patients. Any significant disparities would trigger a review. Doctors would have to explain differences in care delivery. Third, a diverse patient advocacy board. The board included community members, former patients, and people from various racial and ethnic backgrounds. They would review complaints and have real power to investigate and recommend actions. Fourth, changes to the complaint process. Complaints would no longer be dismissed as personality conflicts or miscommunications. Every complaint would receive a thorough investigation. Patterns would be identified and addressed. Fifth, diverse hiring and promotion. The hospital committed to recruiting doctors and staff who reflected the diversity of the community they served. Studies showed that patients often received better care from doctors who shared their racial or ethnic background. James spoke at the press conference too. His voice was steady but emotional. "I don't want revenge," he said. "I never wanted Dr. Chen to lose her license just to make me feel better. But I wanted accountability. I wanted to protect other patients. I wanted to make sure that the next black person who walks into a doctor's office with chest pain gets the same care as a white person with chest pain." He paused, looking at the cameras. This should not have required a heart attack. It should not have required a license revocation. It should not have required national news coverage. Treating all patients equally should be the baseline. It should be the minimum. But here we are, having to fight for basic dignity and equal care. That tells you something about the system we live in. James announced that he would not be returning to his software engineering job. Instead, he was going to dedicate himself to patient advocacy. He wanted to speak at medical schools. He wanted to help train the next generation of doctors to recognize and counteract their own biases. "If something good can come from what happened to me, then maybe my heart attack wasn't for nothing," James said. Sandra Williams stood in the back of the room, watching her husband speak. She was proud of him. He had every right to be angry and bitter. Instead, he was channeling his experience into something constructive, something that might actually change things. Over the next few months, James became a powerful voice in the patient advocacy community. He spoke at medical schools across the state. He told his story to rooms full of medical students. He made them uncomfortable. He challenged them to examine their own assumptions. When a black patient tells you they're in pain, believe them, James said at one presentation. When they tell you something is wrong, investigate it. Don't assume they're exaggerating. Don't assume it's anxiety or stress. Do your job, order the tests, spend the time, treat them like you would want to be treated. He shared the data from Dr. Chen's practice. The medical students were shocked by the numbers. Many had never considered that racial bias could affect medical care so directly. This is not ancient history, James told them. This is not something that happened in the 1950s. This happened last year, in a modern hospital, by a respected doctor, and if you think it can't happen to you, you're wrong. Bias lives in all of us. The question is whether you're brave enough to confront it. Dr. Emily Harrison also became an advocate. She left St. Augustine Medical Center and took a position at a medical school. She taught courses on health equity and medical ethics. She was open about her own failures. I was taught by a racist doctor, and I absorbed those lessons, Emily told her students. I made decisions that harmed patients. I stayed silent when I should have spoken up. I'm telling you this not to excuse my behavior, but to show you how easily it can happen. How bias can hide behind clinical judgment. How discrimination can masquerade as efficiency. She brought in patients like James to speak to her classes. She wanted her students to see the real impact of biased care. Maria Rodriguez was promoted to Director of Patient Advocacy for the entire hospital system. Her work on the Dr. Chen investigation had shown the importance of taking complaints seriously and looking for patterns. She expanded the patient advocacy program and hired more staff. Every complaint matters, Maria said in an interview. Even if it seems small, even if the patient is the only one complaining, we have to listen, we have to investigate. Because that one complaint might be part of a larger pattern we haven't seen yet. Dr. David Park became Chief of Cardiology at St. Augustine. He implemented new protocols for cardiac evaluations. Every patient with chest pain would receive a standardized workup regardless of the doctor's initial impression. The protocols removed some of the subjective judgment that allowed bias to creep in. We can't eliminate human bias completely, Dr. Park said. But we can create systems that don't rely entirely on individual judgment. We can build in safeguards. We can use checklists and protocols that ensure every patient gets the same baseline evaluation. Leonard Thompson, the elderly man who had suffered delayed diagnosis, started a support group for patients who had experienced medical discrimination. They met monthly at a community center. People shared their stories and supported each other. For years, I blamed myself, Leonard said at one meeting. I thought maybe I wasn't explaining my symptoms clearly. Maybe I wasn't being a good patient. It took me a long time to realize that none of it was my fault. The system failed me. The group became a source of healing for many. They wrote letters to hospitals and medical boards. They pushed for policy changes. They testified at legislative hearings. Their voices, combined with James's advocacy, helped pass a state law requiring bias training for all licensed healthcare providers. 6 months after Dr. Chen's license revocation, James received a letter. It was from an elderly woman named Grace Park. She had been a patient of Dr. Chen's 3 years earlier. The letter said, "Dear Mr. Williams, I saw your story on the news. I want to thank you. 3 years ago I saw Dr. Chen with symptoms I now know were signs of heart disease. She told me I was fine and to come back in a year. I never went back because I felt dismissed and unheard. But after seeing your story, I made an appointment with a different cardiologist. They found blockages in my arteries. I had surgery last month. The doctor said if I had waited much longer, I would have had a heart attack. You saved my life by speaking up. Thank you for your courage." James showed the letter to Sandra. They both cried. "This is why," Sandra said. "This is why you had to do all this. For people like Grace." James kept the letter. He kept all the letters he received from patients who said his story had encouraged them to seek second opinions or to trust their instincts when doctors dismissed them. There were dozens of letters. Each one represented a life potentially saved. A year after his heart attack, James returned to St. Augustine Medical Center for a speaking engagement. The hospital had invited him to talk to their clinical staff about the Patient Dignity Initiative and the changes that had been implemented. As he walked through the halls, James remembered the day of his first appointment with Dr. Chen. He remembered the fear and pain. He remembered the dismissal. He remembered leaving that building feeling small and invisible. Now he was returning as a catalyst for change. The irony was not lost on him. He spoke to a room of 200 doctors, nurses, and staff members. He told his story again. He showed them the data. He challenged them to be better. "I know most of you got into medicine to help people," James said. "I know you want to do good work, but good intentions are not enough. You have to actively work against your own biases. You have to question your assumptions. You have to create systems that protect patients from discrimination, even when that discrimination is unintentional." After his speech, a young black doctor approached him. Her name was Jenna Lee. She was a first-year resident in cardiology. "Thank you for sharing your story," Jenna said. "I'm one of only 3 black residents in this program. Sometimes patients are surprised when they see me. Sometimes they request different doctors. It's hard not to internalize that. But you're here," James said. "You're becoming the doctor you needed to see. That matters." "I know," Jenna said, "and I promise you, when my patients tell me they're in pain, I'm going to believe them, every single time." James smiled. "That's all I can ask." As James left the hospital that day, he thought about how far things had come. The changes were real. The training was happening. The monitoring systems were in place. The patient advocacy board was active and effective. But he also knew this was just one hospital. The problem of racial bias in healthcare existed everywhere. Patients were still being dismissed. Complaints were still being ignored. People were still dying because of discrimination. The work was not finished. It might never be finished, but it had started. And that was something. James got into his car. Sandra was waiting for him. "How did it go?" she asked. "Good," James said. "Really good." They drove home together. James's chest hurt a little, like it always did now, a permanent reminder of what he had survived, but also a reminder of why he kept speaking up, why he kept telling his story, why he kept pushing for change. Because dignity was not a luxury, it was a right, and every patient deserved it, regardless of the color of their skin. 3 years later, St. Augustine Medical Center's Patient Dignity Initiative was being adopted by hospitals across the country. James's story was taught in medical schools. The case of Dr. Margaret Chen was used as a cautionary tale about the deadly consequences of racial bias in medicine. James continued his advocacy work. His heart never fully recovered, but his spirit remained strong. He had turned his worst experience into something meaningful. He had taken his pain and transformed it into protection for others. That was his legacy. Not the heart attack, not the discrimination, but the change that came after, the lives that were saved, the system that was improved, the future that was a little bit more just, and it had all started with one simple act: documenting his experience, believing in his own worth, and refusing to stay silent. Sometimes dignity was quiet. Sometimes it was calm documentation and steady persistence. Sometimes it was simply insisting that your pain mattered, that your life had value, that you deserved the same care as everyone else. That kind of dignity could end careers. But more importantly, it could save lives, and in the end, that was what mattered most. James Williams sat in the waiting room of St. Augustine Medical Center, his hand resting on his chest. The pain had started 3 days ago. It was a dull ache that came and went, but this morning it had gotten worse. His wife Sandra had insisted he see a doctor right away. She was a nurse practitioner and knew the signs of heart trouble. The waiting room was clean and bright. James watched other patients come and go. He had taken the morning off from his job as a software engineer. At 52 years old, he had always been healthy. He exercised regularly and ate well. But lately something felt wrong. A nurse called his name. James followed her down a long hallway. She took his blood pressure and temperature. She asked him questions about his symptoms. James explained the chest pain, the shortness of breath when he climbed stairs, the unusual tiredness he had been feeling. "The doctor will be with you soon," the nurse said with a smile. James waited in the examination room. He looked at the diplomas on the wall. Dr. Margaret Chen had graduated from prestigious medical schools. She had been practicing cardiology for 15 years. The reviews online had been excellent. James felt relieved. He was in good hands. 20 minutes passed. James heard voices in the hallway. The door opened and Dr. Chen walked in. She was a woman in her mid-40s with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a white coat and carried a tablet. "Mr. Williams," she said, glancing at the tablet. She looked up at him briefly, then back at the screen. James noticed something change in her expression. It was subtle, but it was there. Her smile seemed to fade just a little. Her eyes seemed less warm than they had been a moment before. "So, chest pain?" Dr. Chen said. She did not sit down. She stood near the door, still looking at her tablet. "Yes," James said. "It started a few days ago. It's a pressure right here in the center of my chest. Sometimes it goes to my left arm." Dr. Chen nodded but did not look at him. "And what do you think is causing it?" James found the question strange. "That's why I'm here, doctor. I was hoping you could tell me. Are you stressed at work?" Dr. Chen asked. "No more than usual," James said. "I mean, I have normal work stress, but nothing unusual." "What do you do?" "I'm a software engineer." Dr. Chen looked up at him then. She seemed surprised. "Oh," she said. Then she looked back at her tablet. "Well, anxiety can cause chest pain. A lot of people don't realize that." James felt uncomfortable. "My wife is a nurse practitioner. She thought I should get some tests done. She's worried it might be my heart." "Is your wife a cardiologist?" Dr. Chen asked. Her tone was sharp. "No, but she knows the symptoms of heart disease." Dr. Chen sighed. "Mr. Williams, I've been doing this for 15 years. I can tell you that most chest pain is not cardiac related, especially in people who are otherwise healthy. But I have shortness of breath too," James said, "and fatigue. My father had a heart attack at 55. Dr. Chen finally approached him. She placed her stethoscope on his chest for a few seconds. She listened, then stepped back. "Your heart sounds fine," she said. "Have you tried stress management? Exercise, maybe yoga?" James blinked. "I exercise 4 times a week. I run and lift weights." "Well, maybe you're overexerting yourself," Dr. Chen said. She was already moving toward the door. "I think what you need is to relax more. Take some deep breaths. Maybe cut back on caffeine." James felt a rising sense of alarm. "Doctor, I'd really like to have some tests done. My primary care physician recommended a full cardiac workup. That's why she sent me to you." Dr. Chen stopped at the door. She looked annoyed. "Mr. Williams, I don't order unnecessary tests. They're expensive, and frankly, insurance companies don't like it when we waste resources." "But my insurance is good," James said. "And this pain is real." "I'm not saying the pain isn't real," Dr. Chen said. "I'm saying it's probably anxiety. Your heart sounds fine. Your blood pressure is a little elevated, but that could be white coat syndrome. You're nervous about being at the doctor." James kept his voice calm and steady. "I would really appreciate if you could order at least some basic tests. An EKG, maybe a stress test." Dr. Chen sighed again. She tapped on her tablet. "Fine, I'll order an EKG and some blood work. But I'm telling you, this is going to come back normal and you're going to feel silly for worrying so much." "Thank you," James said quietly. Dr. Chen left the room without another word. James sat there stunned. He looked at his watch. The entire appointment had lasted 7 minutes. A different nurse came in to do the EKG. She was kind and chatty. She placed the electrodes on his chest and ran the test. "The doctor will review this and call you with the results," she said. James got dressed and left the examination room. As he walked down the hallway, he passed another examination room. The door was partially open. He could hear Dr. Chen's voice inside. She was talking to another patient, a white woman who looked to be about his age. "So let's schedule you for a full stress test and an echocardiogram," Dr. Chen was saying. Her voice sounded warm and concerned. "I want to make sure we catch anything early. Your symptoms sound very similar to what my other patient had last month, and we found a blockage just in time." James stopped walking. He stood in the hallway, listening. The appointment had clearly been going on for a while. He checked his watch again. He had been in his examination room at the same time this other appointment started. She had spent 7 minutes with him. She was still in there with the other patient. James felt something heavy settle in his chest. It was not the physical pain this time. It was something else. He walked to the reception desk and checked out. As he left the building, he pulled out his phone. He opened his notes app and started typing. He recorded the date and time of his appointment. He wrote down everything Dr. Chen had said to him. He noted how long the appointment had lasted. He described how she had dismissed his symptoms without a proper examination. He noted that she had refused to order the tests his primary care physician had recommended. James sat in his car in the parking lot. He read through his notes. Then he added one more line. Heard Dr. Chen with another patient. White woman. Similar symptoms. Dr. Chen ordering full cardiac workup. Warm and concerned tone. Long appointment. James started his car and drove home. His chest still hurt, but now his mind was racing with questions he did not want to ask. Questions about why he had been treated so differently. Questions about whether the color of his skin had anything to do with the 7 minutes he had received versus the 30 minutes he had heard being given to someone else. When he got home, Sandra was waiting. What did the doctor say? She asked immediately. James told her everything. He showed her his notes. He watched as her expression changed from concern to disbelief to anger. She did what? Sandra said. She didn't even examine you properly? She listened to my heart for about 5 seconds, James said. And she only ordered an EKG and blood work? No stress test? No echocardiogram? She said I was anxious, James said. She told me to try yoga. Sandra was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, James, this isn't right. This isn't proper care. With your symptoms and your family history, she should have done much more. I know, James said. We need to report this, Sandra said. James nodded, but he also felt tired. Tired of having to fight to be heard, tired of having to prove that his pain was real, tired of wondering if he was being paranoid or if his instincts were correct. Let's wait for the test results first, James said. Maybe I am just anxious. Maybe she's right. But deep down, James knew something was very wrong, and he knew it had nothing to do with anxiety.